Oh, good day. My name is Dr. Rhoda Arrindell, and I say doctor only because it's part of the title and how people today refer to me. But I'm actually Rhoda Rebecca Arrindell, daughter of Cyril Alexander Arrindell and Janet Minerva Archibald, both now deceased. But I mention them because they are the foundation on which I stand. I was born in Curacao in 1969 and in 1968, 66 actually, but came to St. Martin in 1969 when my father decided that he would return to his homeland with his family after the riots in Curacao. Both my parents had gone to Curacao to work because at that time they could not find sustainable work where they lived. My mother in St. Vincent and my dad here in St. Martin. And so they had to go to Curacao to work. And after the riots, and there were labor unrest that, where some of the workers were being treated unfairly, and because they stood up for their rights, eventually it led to severe labor unrest, and there was a burning of the town in Willemstad, and then my dad decided to return back to the island. That's who I am. I grew up in between Colby, Soccer Garden, and Sultry Bud, to be quite honest, but I spent most of my childhood between Soccer Garden and Colby. Went to the Milton Peters College for secondary school, but I like to tell people that I started at the Imelda Kindergarten because in those days that was like really an important thing. And then on to St. Joseph's School, and then to the Milton Peters College where I did the HAVO, and then left here in 1985 to pursue further studies in the United States. Started at the University of Miami, then transferred to New York, where I graduated with my bachelor's in linguistics from Syracuse University in New York. And immediately after graduation, I came back to St. Martin because I always believe that once you're done, and I like to tell people that I did not receive a scholarship from the island government of St. Martin, but I did get a scholarship at that time from the central government. And I thought I owed it to my country, number one, to return, but also because I wanted to be at home and to work at home. And immediately I came back, but not happy with where I was academically in terms of my preparation. I continued studies while I was on island. So I did a law study at the University of the Netherlands Antilles. Then I went on to do my master's degree in education administration from the University of the Virgin Islands through University of St. Martin. And then eventually I made it to the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras, where I did my doctorate in linguistics. And so that's who I am academically. Professionally, I have worked in a number of jobs. I've always had at least 2 jobs at one point. So there was never a period when I worked only one job. I can't even recall ever having worked one job. But for the most part, people know me as an educator. But I've also worked in journalism, working as a copy editor, writing articles for newspaper. I've also worked as a translator. I've opened my own business. But primarily, I worked at the University of St. Martin. I've also worked at St. Martin Academy, worked at NEPA, worked with the Justice Academy, worked in different areas trying to use my talents to educate, to service through education, but also through assisting in writing curriculum, writing programs, helping to do translations. That's my professional background. Currently, I serve as a professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And just before that, I worked at the University of the Bahamas also as a professor of writing. But that's one side of me. That's the side that pays my bills. The other side of me, the other work that I do that I believe in just as passionately as the work I do in the classroom is my work with youth. I've worked in different areas of youth development, in sports development, and currently and particularly where the issue of reparations is concerned. I am actively involved and engaged in the discussions for reparations for St. Martin. It's something that I do with passion because I see it as a continuation of what I've been doing all my life, actually. So that's who I am. I'm a cultural activist. If you know me, you see me on the cultural scene. But I would sum it up by saying promoting St. Martin culture and St. Martin's cultural identity, who we are as a nation. That has been my lifelong's work. Yes, that's who I am, if I could do that in a nutshell. What inspired me to pursue a career in education? Actually, I didn't pick education. I did not. I left here to pursue linguistics, thinking at that time when I left that I would see myself at one day at the United Nations as a translator, and I would get to travel to these exotic places because I was studying languages. That's the idea I had in my head. And one of the things that quickly you realize when you leave here to go away to study, and I'm sure students can relate to this, is economic hardship. Right? That's a reality for almost every student. And mine came at a time where I was taking a course in linguistics, and one of my classmates was getting a better job. And she came to the class and she said, I got this really great job, and I'm teaching at the moment English as a second language to immigrants, and we need someone to take over, and I want to propose it to the class if anyone is interested in. And my professor said that I should take it. And I said, there's no way, I don't like teaching. I really, it's not my thing. And my professor said, I think you're going to be good for this. You're good for this. And then I asked her, I said, how much is the pay? And at that time it was $11 an hour. And I said, oh yeah, sure, sign me up. So I was motivated out of need. But I must say, the teaching profession chose me. I really believe this, because as much as I was saying that I didn't want to teach, others saw in me a teacher. And my professor insisted that I at least look at it and go check it out. But I was motivated at that time by the pay. And I'm gonna say the very first day, my first students that I was introduced to was a quadruplet from Iran living in the United States. They were 6 years old, and there's one girl and 4 boys, 4 brothers. And so the school principal took me to the classroom and introduced me to the students, that I would be the teacher coming to pull them, because we had in New York a pull-out program for students who were struggling with the English language. And when they pulled out Mimi, I'll never forget her name, she cried. She cried, she screamed, she hollered, she hid behind the door. She didn't want me to come near her. She didn't want me to touch her. She's only 6 years old, but this was in a school where I'm assuming now, in hindsight, that she never seen anyone looking like me so close. This was an all-white school. And I remember leaving there saying, I don't want to do this. I don't think I can do this. Because if the child is going to be so afraid of me, why am I? And I felt hurt also, but my pride was hurt, but also I was terrified. Mimi was a terrorist in my head. But when I met her brothers, her Moat, Mohammed, and then there was another M, I fell in love. I fell in love because these were children, 6 years old, who saw something in me that they gravitated to. Eventually we developed a relationship. Then the parents started asking for me to come to the home to give private classes. So while I was working in the school system with all these different immigrant children with different ages, it was the second elementary school system, and my students ranged in age from 5. My youngest was a Vietnamese youngster to 12, 14 years actually. 14 years were the twins from Paris. And that range of students who needed the same skill, basically to do better in English classes, was what attracted me to the teaching profession. But it also reminded me, because I remember I'm pursuing linguistics. I thought I would be a diplomat, but now I'm seeing the real connection between language and academic success. I'm seeing the importance, and I'm recalling at that time my own experience in St. Martin dealing with Dutch as a foreign language, but also my language of instruction, and what kind of barriers that created for me as a student, and seeing how it played out in the United States with my students in the classroom. And that's where the passion grew, because I had to learn a whole bunch of tricks to be successful in the classroom. And that's where it started.